How did I get into the business? Well, it was circumstance, actually. My husband and I, we were newly married and we had a young son, and we lived in an apartment complex, wanted to get a little puppy. Our landlord didn't want us to get a puppy, and we're starting a family and we needed to expand. We needed more space, so we thought we'd go explore homeownership. And back then we didn't have Zillow. So we picked up a homes magazine at the local grocery store, and we're flipping through the magazine, looking at homes, and we found a few. We'd circle the ones we liked. So we found a few that we thought could work for us. And one in particular we really liked. We wanted to go see it. And so we called the agent up and scheduled an appointment to meet him, and we thought he asked us to meet him at his office, and we thought we would go from there and follow him to see this townhome we were interested in. Well, we get to the office and we're sitting around this table, and it was almost like a pressure cooker. Like he's kind of browbeating us into signing this document that says if we buy a house within the next 6 months, we have to do business with him. And so he slides this paper over to my husband, and my husband looks at it and he, pauses, and then he signs it, and then he slides it over to me and I sign it, and we're all really confused about what's going on here. We think we're going to see a house, and we ended up signing this contract and walking out the door, basically being sent to go see his loan officer before he would show us any properties. And we're both kind of thinking, well, why didn't you tell us that over the phone? Why did you have us come out here? And so we walk out of this office, and I look at my husband and I was like, why did you sign that? And he said, why did you sign that? And I said, I signed it because you signed it. So needless to say, we did not buy a house for that 6-month period. We weren't going to do business with that guy. But we did go see his loan officer, and we show up at this loan officer's place of business and kind of felt the same way, used car salesman type tactics. And we're sitting across the desk talking to this gentleman. He's asking us questions, filling out the loan application. He ends up telling us that we can get approved for X amount of dollars, and it ended up being about $800 a month, which was very confusing to us because we were spending over $1,000 a month in rent at the time. And so I didn't really understand, why am I only qualified to spend $800 when I can clearly afford to spend more than that? And it just really puzzled me, and the whole experience really was quite unsettling. And so I asked my husband one night, what do you think if I get into the mortgage industry? This is going to be like the biggest investment of our lives. I want to understand everything that I'm agreeing to, what I'm getting into. And he's like, whatever makes you happy. So, I'm thinking you have to take some schooling, maybe get a degree. Like, I'm thinking this is a career path, right? But I looked in the white page, not the white pages, but in the want ads, and I see these ads for loan officers, and I called and interviewed with a company and took a position, and I think I only worked for them for about a month or two. And once I got in there, the things that I saw, they were just disgusting, honestly. All of the fraud that was going on, falsification of documents, lying on loan applications. In fact, the owner told my husband and I if we wanted to qualify for a home, because I was so new in the industry, they couldn't use my income, she would make up a position for me with her other company and provide income documents for us to qualify for a home. And I'm like, my mind is blown, like, okay, seriously? This is how we're going to do business? And I was just, the writing was on the wall. It was just so much unethical activity there. It was astounding. And I remember one time a neighbor of mine showed some interest in refinancing, and I had no training. I had no idea what I was doing, but she gave me a packet, an application package, and she met me at my neighbor's home. Now she comes rolling up in her caddy, and her husband, drops her off, and she walks up the stairs, and she's wearing this fur coat and just dripping with diamonds. I'm just money everywhere, just money like melting off her. So we go into my neighbor's house, and we're sitting around his kitchen table, because that's how we did business back then. We did business across the kitchen table, and he's looking at the documents, and he wanted a little bit of extra money to do some home renovations. And so he says, Jennifer, I just don't understand why my closing costs are $10,000. Why would I pay $10,000 in closing costs to get X amount of dollars back to renovate my home? And I couldn't answer the question. It seemed pretty logical to me. I'm like, yeah, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. So I look over at my boss, and she does nothing. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't bail me out. She doesn't explain anything. And I just had to agree with my neighbor. I wouldn't do it either. And we walked out. We ended up not doing a mortgage for him. And I gave my notice shortly thereafter. But I wasn't done. While I was done with that company, I wasn't done. I still wanted to be a loan officer. I still wanted to understand the business. So I looked through the want ads in the newspaper and found some other positions for loan officers. And this time, instead of interviewing a company, interviewing for a company, I interviewed them. So I came across this gentleman by the name of Corey, and he was running a shop called Executive Mortgage and Portage back then. And I interviewed with him on a Friday for 2 hours, and then we agreed to meet the following Friday, and we interviewed for another 2 hours. And basically, I'm asking him all these questions. I want to make sure that the shop that I'm aligned with is a legit shop doing business the right way. And I was very pleased. I really got some good vibes from him, and I trusted him. And so I did. I took a position, and he taught me everything he knew about the mortgage industry. So that's the long-winded story of how I got in the business. And I'll tell you what, I love working with first-time homebuyers because I sat in their shoes and I understand, what they are going through. And by the way, for what it's worth, the reason we couldn't qualify for the $1,000, that we were spending in rent was because of my commission income. You have to earn commission income for 2 years to qualify, to use it to qualify. So I got the answer to that question. But now I understand, first-time homebuyers, they have answers, or they have questions too. They want answers too, and I'm happy to provide them. So why do I do renovation loans? Well, some days I think I'm a glutton for punishment because they are the toughest loans in the mortgage industry to originate. But the way I got started in this segment of the business is out of pure desperation. I think the first year that I was in the industry, I got my W-2 back and it said something like $11,000, and I nearly cried. I had made so little that first year, and my parents kept telling me, you need to get a real job. And I really loved what I was doing. I loved what I was learning. I love the business. I needed a way to get more of it. So back then we would do what was called our milk route. And every Tuesday, real estate offices would have meetings. And so every Tuesday, we'd go out and do our milk route and drop off flyers, rate sheet flyers, and donuts pretty much is what it boiled down to. And, that got to be kind of expensive because you had to pay for it yourself. Your company didn't pay for it for you. And so I figured, I got to do something different here. So one day I walk into this office. It was a local office in Hobart where I grew up, and I knew a lot of the agents there, and they hadn't given me any business, probably because I was really young, and new in the business. And one day I show up, and there was this sweet agent whom I love, and her name was Sheila. And she says, do you do FHA 203K loans? Now, usually when somebody would ask me that question, I would say, technically, we can do them, but I've never done one before. My company hasn't done one before, so, you might want to find someone else who's a little more experienced. But I had been studying these types of loans for a while, a few months, a year, maybe more. So I'd been studying them for a while, and I had a general idea of how they worked. I just never did them. I'd never had done one yet. So when she asked me that question, do you do FHA 203K loans? Man, I tell you, I must have been really hungry that day because I was like, yes, I do. And so, just to give you a little bit of context, we were so poor at the time. Sometimes when people don't have a lot of money, they eat like those ramen noodles, those 10-cent package of ramen noodles. Well, our thing was pancakes. We lived off of pancakes. And I remember calling my mom one day, and I was just crying because I was so hungry. And I was like, I can't eat any more pancakes. And so I'm thinking, like, this agent asked me this question after my last pancake dinner. So I was, out of sheer desperation, I was eager to take any business, including 203K business. Well, she sent me a young couple. Now, I was young myself. I was probably 25, 26. I had a young son when I was 24, so I'd say he's probably 1 or 2 years old at the time this happened. And this couple that I worked with, they were even younger than that. I remember that because when we closed their loan, 21 days later, so I closed this renovation loan in 21 days. Like, that was unheard of. I remember when we closed their loan, I was thinking to myself, well, they can't even go out and get a drink to celebrate. So they were newly married, very young couple. And when they came to me, they didn't know what the word mortgage meant. So I had to explain what that meant and the whole process. To complicate matters, a renovation loan, the fact that we had to find a contractor and get a bid for the work that was being done. So evidently all that studying I had done, it worked out well for us. And after I closed that loan, I kind of got my foot in the door with that agency, and I got more business out of that agency. So How did I get into the renovation segment of our industry? Well, out of sheer desperation. Yeah, I have. I've traveled quite a bit. Actually, I've pretty much traveled the country training other lenders how to do these loans. After I learned how to do them myself and began to specialize in these, it opened up some doors for me to work for other companies. Stonegate Mortgage was Indianapolis based at the time. I was able to take on a position with them and help them build out their HIP program, or their home improvement program. So we built out that department together, and other organizations asked me to come along and work for them as well. And so I did a little bit of consulting for a time, and then I took on some permanent positions. Freedom Mortgage is another one. And with those positions, they enabled me to travel to all different parts of the country and train other lenders how to do renovation loans. So I've seen some really beautiful places and some really amazing people. Now that I'm back originating loans myself, so I'm in the primary markets now instead of the secondary markets, I don't do a whole lot of travel like I used to, but if I do travel now, it's usually to support my colleagues, to do realtor presentations or to meet with contractor organizations, things like that. My day-to-day. Every morning when I come into the office, the first thing I like to do is catch up on the industry news. So there are a couple of commentaries that I subscribe to. So I'll take a peek at those and kind of get a gist of what's going on in the big world of mortgages. And then after that, I'm catching up on emails and phone calls. And one of the things I love about my job is no 2 days are the same. Every day is different. So I'm talking to home buyers or homeowners. I'm talking to realtors, builders, contractors, just all kinds of folks. Sometimes I'm out of the office. I'm doing realtor presentations or meeting with other referral sources. So every day is a little different, and I love each one of them. The best thing I love about my job, and I'm not pulling any arms or legs here, but I love working with the people. I love working with home buyers, specifically first-time home buyers who maybe think they could not afford a home. And not only are they able to afford a home, but we help them get into homes that need work. So, we're putting a new family into a home and we're giving a home a second chance. I mean, who wouldn't love to do that?